Hello, my name is Madison Adelstein, and today we'll be looking at basically Dallas and the events that took place on November 22nd, 1963 on the John F. Kennedy assassination. Now, the things that we noticed whenever we go to visit Dealey Plaza today is that everything is extremely close together. Things could not have been taking place as they were told. The vacant fence is very small. Cars could park behind the fence and be able to be hidden and drive away to and from very easily. And in the confusion, a getaway was possible due to all the people and everybody running. And basically, this is just the perfect place for a killing zone, due to the fact that, again, everything is very close together and there was a lot of commotion at the time of the assassination. Now here we see the Dealey Plaza of the Triple Pass in 1963. On the left we have it in 1963, and on the right we have a better view of it in 1967, which shows basically everything more clearly than in the 1963 photo. Basically, we can see here the events that took place and which route the president had taken. We can see which way he went, and we can see basically the outline of all the buildings and the road in which he took, basically his route, during the parade in which he unfortunately ended up assassinated. Once you go to the Dealey Plaza, there is a plaque to commemorate the assassination on that day, and it sort of goes somewhat into a little bit of detail with the assassination. We can also again see Dealey Plaza from a different angle, which is the 1963 on the left, which is an actual photograph taken at the time of the assassination, and in 2017, here we see the spot commemorating the time that the place, where John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And here's just another view of that. So then we have Allegan's position, except this one is more in the grass. Originally he was in the street, and he was basically the one to get almost where President Kennedy had been assassinated. Here we can also see a clear position of the Texas School Book Depository, and determine basically how Oswald possibly could have been the lone assassin. And here's the actual view. Again, the previous picture is just him in the grass over onto the side. And then we also have Mary Ann Moorman's position. This is basically about where she was standing whenever she took this photo of John F. Kennedy whenever he was being assassinated. And here's the county's records building. Again, we can see how close it is and its position to the street. And here we have the Texas School Book Depository. Now this is the supposed window in which Oswald was standing in. Now if we go back to the other pictures before, John F. Kennedy was well past this location. Not only that, but opposed to the 2017 version of it, the 1963 version, the street wasn't as wide and didn't have as much space for someone to be able to shoot someone in the street from the Texas School Book Depository, especially from this window. Again, looking over the facts through other videos, we also know that this window was closed at the time of the assassination. And we also have the Dallas, Texas building. We can see how close and far away it is to the street and to the Texas School Book Depository. Now, the face of views in 2017. Now, the street view of the Texas School Book Depository is the picture on the left, and on the right we have on the top of the triple overpass bridge. Now, on the street view of the Texas School Book Depository, you can tell that it's way too narrow for someone to have been able to shoot down to the street and actually be able to hit John F. Kennedy, especially in the angles that John F. Kennedy was hit from. Now, on the triple overpass bridge, it's obviously there's a lot more open space for someone to be able to commit an assassination and be able to get away more freely. Here's just some more of the triple overpass street views taken in 2017. Again, we can see that there was a lot more room for an assassination to take place than it would be from this very sharp angle down at the Texas School Book Depository. Now, behind the picket fence, Now, this photo was taken in 2017. However, most of the picket fences are the exact same ones from 1963, and they don't really like to change the height of the picket fences. We know that the picket fences are the same height from before. This is also the railroad yard of 1963 and the parking lot shown in 2017. obviously, this was the parking lot in 1963, the date of the parade. Now, obviously, there is a lot of people, so anybody could have been here in order to commit the conspiracy and be able to leave freely during the commotion. Again, here's the picket fence of 2017. Obviously, somebody could stand behind it and potentially be able to assassinate the president as a gunman. And since his car could be covered, he would be very easy. It would be very easy for him to escape, especially during all of the commotion. Now, the Abraham Zapruder film. Now, the Zapruder film is the only actual video evidence we have of John F. Kennedy's assassination. This is where Zapruder was taken. However, where Zapruder was standing basically on a very narrow cement wall, and this was his view of, this is basically where it was taken. This was his view of the parade, as seen in 2017. And here's the actual Zapruder film being filmed in 1963. This is a little snippet from it. Now, after seeing where Zapruder stood with his camera, we cannot, we can tell that he could not have stood there without any help, since it was very narrow and he had to hold the camera. And again, the cameras were somewhat larger than they are now. He would have also heard the shots to the front and of his rear, which would explain most of the commotion where everybody was running everywhere else. Not only that, but his film could be much more shaky if it was taken by hand. Again, he claims that it was taken by hand. However, the Zapruder film is it looks professionally done. There's not a lot of shakiness as with someone who was actually taken by hand from where he stood. And all of these things make us really wonder about the film and this man and all of its credibility. Now, here we have the Texas School Book Depository. He has seen in 2017 on the left and on the right in 1963. Now, obviously, 2017 would have even less of an advantage to kill the assassin, but however, in 1963, it's even, it might look a little bit better due to the fact that the trees aren't as overgrown. However, you still have that very narrow angle down whenever you have to shoot to assassinate someone from the position in which John F. Kennedy was. And here we have the position at Elm Street where John F. Kennedy was assassinated at. And here's images from the Zapruder film of when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Now, behind the picket fence on the railroad, in the railroad yard parking lot in 2017, here's just some more footage to see how busy it looks. Again, most of these buildings have been there since 1963, well, before 1963. And so the layout is basically the exact same, which basically shows us the layout of what someone in 1963 may have been able to work with in order to assassinate the president, John F. Kennedy. Now, the corner of Elm Street in Houston in 2017. Now, this was the very last time, this was the last curve in John F. Kennedy's life, meaning this was the very last time where his car would turn during the parade before he was assassinated. Now, in here we can see the John F. Kennedy Museum in 2017. Obviously, they're selling a lot of somewhat memorabilia and a lot of things relating to the John F. Kennedy assassination. And so they're making a lot of profit off of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And this is, again, the view of Houston and Elm Street in 2017. And here's the Dell Tech's building today in 2017. It's been turned into the John F. Kennedy Museum. And again, this is the Dell Tech's building, and here is the parade going by. And this is the county records house building, Now, the conclusions from the visit to the scene. Now, large amounts of money are being made from the event. This can be seen with all of the things being sold at the museum. Not only that, but we can also see that the parking lot and the railroad and parking area in 1963 were perfect grounds for someone to be able to assassinate John F. Kennedy and leave without anybody really recognizing them. We can also see that things are much closer in real life, and that there's not for example, the buildings are a lot closer to the street than what one would think, so it would be harder to assassinate them. Not only that, the buildings are a lot closer together, so that may allow someone to be able to leave in all of the commotion, and nobody really be able to pay attention to them. We can also see that the Zapruder film would not have been likely done as we were told. Basically, we can very well assume that the Zapruder film is very well tampered with. Also, if you look more into the Zapruder film, you can see all the shadows are off. A lot of shadows are off, and there's not as many people as we suspected there was at the parade. The X's on the streets are not the spots of the shots, and if this is true, we can tell according to what the government's saying about Oswald being the lone assassin, no one could shoot John F. Kennedy from the Texas School Book Depository, the 6th floor, where they say Oswald shot him, if the X's are the spots where he was shot. Not only that, but Oswald was obviously not the killer due to the fact of all these things. Now here's the visit to Oak Cliff in 2017. This is what Oak Cliff looks like. This is also the top 10 records of 2017. The top 10 records, both Tippit and Oswald came there on the day of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. This is where, again, Oswald and Tippit met. We can also see that on November 22nd, 1963, that the time frames do not add up. For example, time frames do not add up because on 12/30, the president was shot in the Texas School Book Depository. However, there are several photos that show that Oswald, was on the outside of the Texas School Book Depository at 12:30. How was he able to shoot John F. Kennedy if he was not even in the building? From there, Oswald took a bus at 12:45, which was 15 minutes after the shot, and 5 minutes after that, he got off the bus and was able to haul a taxi. From there, he took him 10 minutes to get to his house, and from after his house, it took him 4 minutes to get to the Texas Theater, which was several miles away, in which he claims that he walked to the Texas Theater. Now, at 1:40, he arrives at the Texas Theater. According to the police reports, at 1:40, he arrives at the theater. However, he was at the theater until his arrest at 1:40. He was arrested at 1:40. So how could he be arrested at 1:40 if he did not arrive until 1:40? Now, other things that do not add up. Now, he was arrested at 1:40 for killing John F. Kennedy and Tippit. However, there was no evidence gathered yet in order to prove that Oswald did kill John F. Kennedy. Not only that, but no investigation was completed, no ballistics or DNA tests were taken, and no physical IDs were made yet in order to prove that Oswald did commit the crimes. Not only that, but the boarding house lady, which was pretty much blind in her right eye, claims that she saw Oswald run past her right side at 1 o'clock. However, how could she be able to give a positive ID if Oswald was running past her bad eye? Not only that, but the escape path, does not make any sense. How could Oswald be careful before 12:30, but after 12:30 just magically fall completely apart? Now, what I mean by careful before 12:30 on November 22nd, 1963, is that he made sure he got a job at the Texas School Book Depository about 5 weeks before John F. Kennedy came to Dallas. Not only that, but that would basically mean that he already knew that he was going to kill John F. Kennedy. Somehow he also was able to know that John F. Kennedy would change his route in Dallas even before John F. Kennedy knew this. He also ordered a rifle through the mail order. The mail order was never cashed, so there was no proof to the fact that he ever actually got his gun. He made sure that he sent the rifle to the P.O. box and that no one had any record of him picking him up. He also made sure that he brought the rifle to work with him on the day of the parade. And on his lunch hour, he made sure to assemble the rifle so that it would be all ready. He also shot the president from a left-handed sniper's nest, being a right-handed man, and he did this without being able to see John F. Kennedy. We say this because that's the only way he would have been able to shoot John F. Kennedy the way that the Warren Commission is stating, and even then, it doesn't all line up. Not only that, but finally, before around 12:30, he was able to escape without being noticed. Again, all of this was done perfectly. No one ever caught on to it. and so he was being careful. However, basically right after the assassination, he left his rifle on the 6th floor. The rifle that he was made so he tried so carefully to make sure no one could pin him for. He also left his bag that he carried the rifle into work. He left the shell casings of the gun. He takes a bus, then he takes a taxi, then he goes to his boarding house and is seen by a person who is able to ID them. Now, all these things are very careless due to the fact that this means that there is stuff to pin him to the assassination of John F. Kennedy and then later Officer Tippit. It's also it also just marks him as being there and makes him look more guilty. Now, someone who actually took their time in order to plan the assassination, which was obviously more than 5 weeks if he got the Texas School Repository job earlier, 5 weeks before the assassination of John F. Kennedy, then he would have also thought all of this through and wouldn't have left so many things at the scene of the crime. Not only that, but he also walked a mile where he meets Tippit and then proceeds to shoot him, where he then drops one of his billfolds containing his IDs and a driver's license in which he never had. Then he runs a mile, goes to the movies, and drops his jacket. Inside the movie, he tries to shoot a cop, gets frisked, and they find another billfold, again with IDs in it, where he's arrested and put in the car, where they find another wallet on him. Now, nobody carries this many wallets, and again, nobody would make sure to drop these many wallets if they were actually trying to get away with an assassination. Now here we can see the Texas Theater, and on the left in November 1963, and on the right in November 1932. The theater is basically a landmark, and it was very well known, and a lot of people went to visit it. And here we see this is where Oswald was arrested on November 22nd, 1963, for the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Now, if we look at the timeline of the two Oswalds at 1:15, one Oswald is here, and the other one is here at the Texas Theater, and the other one was at his home at 1:15. The Oswald timeline at 1 p.m. Again, one was on his way home, and one was at the theater. A man was selling tickets and doing concessions at the theater, and he states that Oswald bought a ticket around 1 o'clock, and popcorn about 7 minutes after at 1:07. If this is the case, then again, this means that none of the timeline adds up. All of it it doesn't add up, and it's just wrong. Again, this was the movie that Oswald was singing and the popcorn. Texas Theater was a mile from 10th and Patton. Again, so that means that Oswald would have had to run a mile, making the timeline not add up at all. Now, Tippit is killed between 1:06 and 1:15. This is the time where the man selling the movie tickets and the popcorn states that Oswald was already in the theater, had already bought his ticket, and was about to buy his popcorn. How could Oswald kill Tippit if he was somewhere else at this time? That means that there was a second Oswald. Now, the time Oswald was here, he was killing Tippit. Again, this does not add up. They have a plaque commemorating Officer Tippit's death as a historical marker for the November 23rd, 1963 killing of Tippit. This marker was put up across the street from where he was killed. And here's a view of what 10th and Patton looks like in 2017 today. Here it is again in 1963 and in 2017. In 1963, it was more closed off, and not a lot of people would have been able to see. Now, the route doesn't make sense either, and there was no motive or rationale behind any of it. How could the same single lone nut assassin pull off the crime of the century by himself, and then an hour later be caught and killed by and then an hour later, and then 48 hours after he was caught, be killed by another lone nut? Now, however, if they knew each other, Oswald was not escaping on November 22nd, 1963. This would make more sense. Again, this was more this is a route that would make more sense due to the time frame. We also have evidence that all of the evidence towards Oswald was planted. Again, all of his billfolds and the fact that he was placed at several different locations at times. Now, intelligence report story about FBI agent Hosty and Project Solo. Again, this was a report done to explain how Oswald may have offered to kill John F. Kennedy for another country. Now, Oswald may have moved these to the course of his job. Now, right here we see that when they basically that the evidence could have been planted due to the fact that they found the evidence and his fingerprints at his job. They could have just been there due to the fact that that was his workplace. And the backyard picture was created. Here we can obviously see how Oswald is not really the man in this picture and how someone could very easily mimic the picture in order to make it look as though he was holding the gun that was later determined to be used to kill John F. Kennedy. Now, according to, Russian intelligence on November 25th, 1963, 3 days after the assassination, stated that they never believed that the U.S.'s story that Oswald was a lone gunman. And here's a little statement about as to why they believe this. It basically goes into the fact that this was not an act that any individual could have done. Again, here's Project Solo. Project Solo, FBI informed that Oswald at the time of the Mexico City visit, and the agents of Bookut and Hosty of the questioning of Oswald on November 22nd, 1963. They are there at the first interrogation of Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, why are they there? To promote the narrative, Russia was behind this. Oswald worked for them. The result of nuclear war, if we could not claim this. The false flag logic appeals to America-loving patriots who are seeking help. Again, here's the false flag narrative. They created a false flag for Americans to follow. Here it says that they were derived from the military concept of flying false colors. False flags are when governments and other organizations carry out covert operations to deliberately blame others for the atrocities in order to mobilize military intervention and promise of regime change. Basically, they just wanted citizens to be patriots. Now, the people believed it was true. The police believed they were helping their cause. The people believed this was true due to the fact that there was not a lot of other news sources at the time, so it was very easy to manipulate the people. Not only that, but due to the fact that the government also had large tampering in the assassination, the police felt as though that everything they were doing was correct, even if it turned out that it wasn't. Now, how are we able to get people to do what you want them to do without telling them to do it? It's very obvious. It's just a lot of manipulation skills. Blame the communists, but we still know better. But we will know better. This is the weak. This is John F. Kennedy's wife, and she basically claimed that she wasn't involved in the weak. Now, 7 days before his assassination, John F. Kennedy stated that there's a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose the plot. Now, it makes a lot of sense as to why John F. Kennedy would be assassinated by his government, due to the fact that he believed that the government wanted to be able to control the people that he was the president over. And if he was going to expose all of this, then it would make a lot of sense as to why the government would want to kill him in order to cover these sort of things up. Now, the problem is, those were not his words. Now, on November 15th in New York City on the Catholic Youth, John F. Kennedy said, Winston Churchill once said there was a democracy in the worst form of government except for all of the other systems that have been tried. It is most difficult. It requires more of you, disciplined character, self-restraint, and willingness to serve the public interest as well as our own private interests. Whatever we are able to do in this country, whatever success we are able to make of ourselves, whatever leadership we are able to give, whatever demonstration we make that a free society can function and move ahead and provide a better life for its people. All those things that we do here have their effect all around the globe. The world is engaged in the most difficult and trying struggle in its long history. All the great epics which have torn the world for the last 2,000 years pale in comparison to the great ideological gulf which separates us from those who oppose this. It is our responsibility not merely to denounce our enemies and those who make themselves our enemies, but to make the system work, to demonstrate what freedom can do and what those who are committed to freedom and the future can do. So I realize that this meeting is not only a meeting of the youth today, but those of whom we accept so much in the future. Now we dare not forget that we are the heirs of the first revolution. Let the word of this forth from the time and place to friend and foe alike, that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans, born to this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed, and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Again, this is what John F. Kennedy actually said on January 20th, 1961. Now it is our turn to take the lead for this effort.